My name is Russell Saba. I'm the Jewish Outreach Director for the RIGOP, along with New England too. I started to do these events because I got tired of everyone accusing everyone for being Democrats, actually, or not being open-minded to the idea that there are Jewish Republicans or the Jewish independents that are open-minded. And then Israel has been a very hot topic today. As you all know, there's all these rallies and events going on in New York. I know in Providence there's going to be one next month too. So Governor Ehrlich has been a good friend to Rhode Island, a good friend to many Republicans, a good friend to a lot of us here. And this is Governor Ehrlich's sixth time here. Governor Ehrlich has also been a good friend to me, and I wanted to give him an opportunity because he's one of the many people exploring the run for president of the United States as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Bob Ehrlich will be speaking, and we're going to have a Q&A after around 8:15, just so we have enough time. And then the book signing, all the money of the books will be donated to Stand With Us RI, which is the organization that's fighting the BDS movement here in Rhode Island and across other states too. So we're not just to Rhode Island, we do events in New England as well too. But this is mainly for the New England group to have an opportunity to listen to other candidates, other politicians from the other side of the aisle, not just one at a time. So please give a round of applause for Governor Bob Ehrlich.
I'm going to correct my friend. I'm not running for president. But Russ, thank you. I have been running around the presidential primary states, and I'll tell you the story how it began, and give you a couple observations about the country and our economy and our culture and our national insecurity when it comes to the world these days. And then I'll be happy to open up for questions. So, anyway, it's great to be back in Rhode Island. I'm from Maryland. I'm a Republican from Maryland. I'm not easily intimidated. Hostility does not, and I know I'm a friendly crowd here, but when you're Republican in Maryland, you are in a great, as you know, minority. So coming to Rhode Island as a Republican is not intimidating. I have been here a number of times, as Russ said, and we've got to know each other. You might be running for office, I heard that. You want everybody to vote for you, is that right? Last August, I received an email from the New Hampshire party, and it said, "We like your book, and the book that you all get tonight, and would you come up to New Hampshire and do a book tour and help Scott Brown and talk to some college kids and all that?" So I did, and that led to about 35 speeches, maybe 40 speeches around the country over the past 6-7 months, many in presidential primary states. And when you go to presidential primary states, people think you're running for president, even though you've been invited there. And I've been invited to New Hampshire 12 times. I've never said I'm running. We have lots of friends running, lots of good candidates. It's plenty deep pool. I'll be glad to get into individual personalities later if anybody wants to ask. I'll be diplomatic. But I have been around the country a bunch talking about issues that are important to us now. And so I'll just say this, and we'll get into foreign policy in just one brief second. But when people ask me for the country, as I sort of break it down to 3 insecurities, one economic, one cultural, and one national insecurity. Believe me, when it comes to the economy, the American middle class is pretty nervous. There's a lot of 26-year-olds living in basements, and labor force participation has been at its lowest since the 1970s. And so there is a sense of, and it's brought about a lot by this post-industrial economy we have, and you see it with the trade rhetoric. Can we afford to trade with the world? We don't trade with the world, we die. You trade or die, we all know that. But there are certain insecurities with regard to our economy and our future that are real. And for the first time in a long time, the American public, in answering poll questions, parents are questioning whether their kids are going to live a better life than them, which is the definition of the American dream. And when the American dream gets put at risk, we got a problem when it comes to our future. And that's just the answer to poll questions. Concerning our culture, there's lots to say. We could get bogged down on that. It's just really interesting that a president who not so long ago was making fun of the Republicans for wanting to build a moat on the southern border. Remember that line? Now fast forward to the 4th of July weekend, where the American public is being told we may actually have an ISIS attack in the homeland this weekend. The JV's been elevated. They're now varsity, and it's real. And that's sort of my problem with some of the cultural values that I see in the country coming from this president and the left-wing Democratic Party. Joe the plumber was wrong. You didn't build that. You got to be lucky. Sovereignty, illegal immigration, all this has the American public generally confused. And in my view, a lot of these, particularly in the economic realm, they're countercultural. When you didn't build that, becomes sort of a mantra. When it's just the opposite of the value many people in this room were born with, and I define as uniquely American, you come here without a buck and you actually can make something yourself and be successful. And the dream is to be successful, build your own business, and not feel guilty about it. That's the American dream. And so this whole thing, you're lucky, you didn't build that, Joe the plumber, is, in my view, countercultural. And it's, again, a reason for this confusion we have concerning where we are. And when you add immigration and just by the stroke of a pen, 4 million people made legal, and pretending that sovereignty is not as important as it is, pretending the southern border is not as important as it is, and all for politics and to build constituencies, we got a real problem in this country. And which brings me to the national insecurity. All of us in this room know that the Republicans got fired because an anti-war activist senator named Barack Obama said, enough's enough of casualties, enough of wars to nowhere, we're firing the Republicans because they got us in two messes, and I'm going to end those two wars. And he's done so, kind of. The problem is, as we all know, in real life, history does not end. It's not a period. History is a semicolon. There's always a next chapter. Someone recently said, you can't depart the Middle East. You can't exit the Middle East because the Middle East will follow you. Think about that this weekend, by the way. The Middle East will follow you. You can't say you ended a war. You just simply left. And all of us in this room know history. And history teaches anything. History teaches that when the greatest force for good in the world exits stage left, miscreants tend to fill vacuums. Throughout the history of the world, bad guys fill vacuums. China, the South China Sea today. Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. ISIS right in the middle of the Middle East. You name the miscreant or the miscreant group, I'll show you they're responding to weakness. And weakness invites problems. And weakness invites insecurity with the American public. So we've had this sort of interesting thing with Afghanistan and Iraq, and then bad execution, leaving Afghanistan, pretending that was done, bad execution in Iraq, anti-war activist president, we're going to end it, didn't end. And now the American public's confused. We don't like casualties and wars to nowhere. We also don't like security alerts on 4th of July weekend. And so the public's confused and we're really insecure. And when you add sort of this lack of willingness to cooperate with allies, whether it's the Free Syrian Army or the Kurds or Bibi Netanyahu, it adds further concern to the psyche of the American public. And that's where we are. We are now in the initial stage of changing history. We are now going to invite a nuclear Iran. We're now going to change the post-war denominator that Secretary Kissinger, not so long ago, in the Wall Street Journal, stated very eloquently that the presidents of both parties have held a non-nuclear Iran as a denominator for world order, and this president is changing it. which raises a question that we all need to debate in the course of this presidential campaign. Because Israel's new friends, UAE, the Saudis, and the Jordanians, they want to know if the next American president or this American president post-deal is going to extend a nuclear American umbrella to them or not. And if not, guess what? We've now really opened the door to a nuclear Middle East. And you're talking about instability. And if we are going to extend that nuclear umbrella to moderate Sunni regimes, we better talk about it in very clear terms of what we're doing so the American public understands the terms and conditions of American foreign policy post a threshold nuclear Iran. Have I got everybody's attention? Am I depressing everybody? I don't want to depress everybody, but it's a depressing situation. And so, as I've been running around the country sort of as a non-candidate for president, but talking about these serious issues, I see this sense of instability and insecurity and sort of a demand for leadership. Now, certain election cycles lend themselves to leadership, in my view, others don't. I'm a friend of Mitt Romney, like Mitt Romney, think he's a strong leader. 3 million Republicans stayed home last time and didn't vote for Mitt Romney. Whether it was Mormonism, whether it was abortion, whether it was Romneycare, whatever it was, they didn't vote for the CEO, but they rehired the community organizer. And when you rehire the community organizer, you get more community organizing. And the next American president is going to inherit 8 years of community organization around the world. The central problem here, in my view, is respectfully this. The president recently said that, geez, the United States today is the most respected nation in the world because world polls count for him. His goal is to be really popular around the world. In my view, and I hope in your view, an American president's job, first and foremost, is not popularity around the world. It's the security of America and American interests around the world, and damn the polls. And if that's not the case, we got a problem. Because if poll approval is your goal, you will do anything within your means to increase your poll numbers, even if it means cutting a deal with the world's largest sponsor of terror, and in the process of negotiations over years, not demanding their call to eliminate Israel, not demanding that Iran backs off on its terror practices, not demanding anything despite the fact your sanctions are working, but because you want a deal so bad, you've walked away from your sanctions, and the world knows it, and they know it. And they know who they're dealing with. So here we are. We are a year and a half, or no, a year and a half, but with Donald Trump, I'm discombobulated, so however many months we are away from November 2016. And people ask me, all right, foreign policy is going to play a role, and where should the Republicans be? Well, I think I've just articulated where the Republicans should be. The issue is who can get there and articulate these principles in a non-threatening way. Who can articulate the importance of a secure southern border without necessarily insulting lots of people. Who can articulate a Bush-like foreign policy, and I hate to say that, but it's not the cowboy America, but it's not the great placater. It's articulating our national security interests around the world to the American public so the American public understands what's at stake at the moment. Which candidate is best able to do that? And the answer is, I don't know. But I will tell you this. As a Republican, I know most of these candidates. They're really talented people, many of them. They're successful governors. I'm kind of, even though I served in the state legislature and Congress and as governor, I'm kind of partial to governors. Governors make decisions. You see in the Oval Office today, someone who was not acclimated to making decisions prior to becoming president, and this is what you get, non-decisions. Ask Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, how they can, anyway. So with regard to our field today, a lot of successful people, a lot of successful governors, some successful senators, but for the most part, successful people who've won elections and been able to articulate agendas along the way. Whether it's 13, 15, 18, Christie and Lamar, Kasich. To Republicans, my admonition is don't be upset now. It's okay. We have a lot of talent and a lot of successful people, and they got Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Who's a 22 in New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders is a 22, my God. And so I just think we've learned some lessons from last time as far as the quality of our candidates. I think we've learned some lessons as far as numbers of debates that tend to not only bore people, but get our leading candidates to say sometimes dumb things that lead to narratives that the Democrats and the left drive and end up hurting us in national elections. But when the leading Democratic candidate won't talk to the press, literally, and answer questions on a daily basis, I'm feeling pretty good about our chances. And with that, I will open the floor up for observations, questions, concerns. Yes, sir.
Have you given any thought to how the Republican Party should position itself regarding the significant social changes that have occurred?
Yeah, I live this. It's not, pluralism is not a one-way street. I support traditional marriage. I have had gay employees in senior positions. People who support gay marriage don't get to call me a bigot because I live my moral / religious values on this issue. I don't get to call them anything either. That's what the country's all about. So I think we have to be careful about, I talk about defining terms a lot in politics. Pluralism means something. Pluralism means, and by the way, the Religious Restoration Act, that's pluralism in practice. It's, we have compelling interests on both sides and we figure it out in the middle. That's exactly what that act does. When it comes not just to gay marriage, but when it comes to immigration, a whole variety of social issues, we need to define our terms. You're not anti-immigrant because you think the stroke of a pen allowing 4 million illegal folks in the country is somehow good policy. You're not a nativist or ethnocentric because you believe that borders count and sovereignty counts and maybe we should know who's in the country. But sometimes we allow definitions to sort of run their own course. I earlier had an interview, I talked about multiculturalism. I think multiculturalism is alien to this country. It's not what the country's about. The country is about different ethnicities, different religions, different races, all coming here and assimilating into a uniquely American culture. Not separating yourselves out. If you think the great Muslim experiment in the UK and Australia has been so successful, please stand up. That was an experience in anti-assimilation. Come to our country and don't assimilate. Keep your own. That's never worked ever. It's a guaranteed recipe for disaster. So I think we have to be careful about our terms. We celebrate our multi-ethnicities, we celebrate the fact that people come here from all over the world still want to come here from all over the world without a buck and become successful. It doesn't matter what your race, doesn't matter your ethnicity, what your religion, or no religion. But when you come here, there's a social contract. And we should never be afraid to articulate it. The social contract is we welcome you and forget everything. We don't care anything other than the fact that you want to be an American, which means social contract, there's certain responsibilities you have. Learn English, for example.
Right.
Right? And abide by our laws, and you don't get to pick and choose our laws. And if you want to separate yourself out, you might want to go to another country, because this country is about bringing people together, not separating them. Now, what I just said used to be conventional wisdom. And when I said that as governor, the left went nuts, went crazy. And I never backed off. And you know what happened after a couple of weeks of people asking me when I was going to apologize for my comments? Nothing. Nothing. Because that's what the country's all about. When the country ceases to be about an assimilated people celebrating its freedom, it's not the country anymore. We're something else. That's my problem with Barack Obama. America is really exceptional. Barack Obama's comment a few years ago was, I'm sure Greenland and Greece, maybe be an example of Greece, think they're exceptional too. Well, everyone has pride in their ethnicity, but this is a pretty unique place in the annals of human history. And if you don't get that, we're losing something off our fastball.
I'm not a young guy anymore, and
Neither am I.
I've seen a lot. I consider myself a good American. I served the country. I was in the Korean War.
So is my dad.
Okay, so that puts us almost on the same. And I've started off, you might say, as a socialist. I moved as a Democrat. I'm now a conservative.
You're evolving. All right.
Whatever you want to call it. However, anecdotally, I look at exceptions. And the last couple of days, I mean, things look like they're going off a cliff.
Yes.
I saw on television a guy taking petitions to close down American flags in public service. I don't know if you've seen it.
American flags are where?
In all public buildings and utilities and institutions. Get the American. This was a kind of a rollover from the Confederate. And he had, I think he was outside of a college in San Diego. I don't know if anybody can guess. But people came in eagerly to sign a petition, mostly young people. I would say about 25. That's the domestic situation. It's evolving, as you say. The other thing is the foreign situation. I was bowled over yesterday when I saw that the Taliban was being attacked by whom? ISIS. Now the Taliban was everybody's worst nightmare.
They're too moderate. Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, these guys that are really crazies are killing each other. So I'm saying, what
That's
kind
a norm
of world
over
are
there.
we in right now? And we have to do something about it now, as we speak. And this is a way of doing it. And I just wanted to make it as a statement rather than.
Sir, I really agree with you, because I think what you're asking for is some clear lines. Now, we're used to college students acting crazy, and we're used to liberal college professors getting college kids to do their thing. I'm writing an article now on these microaggressions. Anybody know what a microaggression is?
Yeah.
I mean, this is higher education. Are you kidding me? What are you teaching these kids? I have a 15-year-old and 11-year-old. We're inappropriately old parents. And my kids are my oldest son's going to go to college in 2 years, and somebody's going to teach them. Are you kidding me? Learn English. Learn American history. Microaggression. Microaggression is, I guess, if you're Irish and you see a potato, it might remind you of a potato famine, and so get the potato out of my sight. Right? That's basically what it is. I mean, it's just little things that could cause you dissonance. It's all about the craziness of the culture, what you're talking about. It's insanity. It's ridiculous. It's anti-intellectual. It's silly stuff. But our college kids are being taught this stuff. And guess one of my problems with our culture right now, and I didn't bring it up earlier. For some reason, the left today in America thinks we should have an offenseless society. That you should go through life without ever being offended. When Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock last week said enough. They're killing humor. I don't want to do any college campuses anymore. You know, they'll protest us. It's humor. It's a sense of humor. We're losing it. It's exactly along the lines of what you're saying. We're losing this sense of culture and diversity. You know, I'm in politics. I've been called names. All right. If you do it respectful, I can deal with it. But when we back off, we got a problem. We should never back off of silly stuff. I never back off of my definition of our culture, what I just told you. Some people said I was, the worst ever for thinking that. When we back off when we're right, we're part of the problem. And we should not be afraid to say what's silly. And I'm glad Seinfeld and Chris Rock stood up last week and said, we're not even doing college camp. Who wants to put up with this? Look at the commencement speakers in America's, there's never conservative, ever, anywhere. And it's a problem. We should not back off. And my admonition to this room and the people who care about this country and this culture is you have to engage. Because the left, they're winning. And they're winning silliness. And America and our culture are all the weaker for it. So we better elect someone who's not afraid to talk to the press, and not afraid to come clean with the American public, and not afraid to be honest with the American public this time.
I'm a professor at an art school. And
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm a professor at an art school of design.
Okay.
And
sorry to insult your profession, but I meant it.
No, but there's a political figure in Rhode Island. His name is Greg Garrett, and he thinks that the future of Rhode Island depends on our respect for the physical environment, for the bay. And then he blames the problems of the bay on wealthy people. And I sent him a little email, and I said, we shouldn't villainize the wealthy people. They created a Rhode Island.
You're sure you're a professor?
Yeah. Anyway,
do they know you think this?
My point is, no, I mean, I get in trouble with my colleagues for moving as far as I have in the right, in terms of right. And my feeling is, first of all, the word liberal has lost its meaning.
It has.
It's not liberal.
No, it's not liberal. You're right.
What about the word conservative?
You're right. You're
What
right.
about the word conservative? The Pope has made great headway in achieving respectability for the Vatican by embracing environmental issues.
Yeah.
Now, Teddy Roosevelt established the National
Park System.
Why don't the Republicans talk about that? Why don't the Republicans deal with some of the legitimate issues on the left and point out that they didn't begin on the left, including the victory in the Civil War, the destruction of slavery was a Republican accomplishment. So we have allowed the Republicans to represent things which are not popular on the campus. On the other hand, the Democratic Party is guilty of having created those very problems in the first place. So one of the reasons why I moved from my youthful embrace of the left towards my more mature embrace of the right is because I can see sometimes in subtle ways that if you don't study the evolution of an idea, you're lost from the start. So I would like at some point to be invited by somebody in the Republican Party to write a speech for them. Maybe it wouldn't be a popular speech, and maybe nobody would know what I was talking about. But I would like to deal with some complicated issues that nobody knows anything about. And that's really why I have a little trouble embracing the Republican Party, but I've swallowed it, partly because of size, educating me, and other people educating me, but partly and primarily because of Israel. The left has become anti-Semitic, and the right wing has become pro-Jewish and pro-Israeli. And so all of that little, and I wrote an article about my admiration for the young Bush, George W. Bush. I liked him. I thought he spoke beautifully. I don't think Obama speaks well at all. Not because of his content, but his sing-song rhetoric seems very shallow.
Who's reading?
Very shallow to me. I think he's a bad speaker. But I think Jeb Bush was an excellent speaker.
He can sing. So when this gets out on camera, what new college are you going to be employed by? First of all, you're right. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy, but when we do dumb things, it plays into narratives. Republicans hate women. Republicans are against birth control. What? What? I don't know what Republican is birth control. What was sold last time? Mitt Romney was going to be the CBS interception new birth control plan. Right? They ran those ads. They ran it in Colorado this past cycle. They take two dumb statements by two Republicans running for the Senate 2 cycles ago, and they run their narrative. You're right about the environment. I authored the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Act, the most important environmental initiative in the history of Maryland. At least the Chesapeake Bay Foundation said in this generation. Right? You forgot Richard Nixon, the EPA, right? So who killed civil rights forever? Southern Democrats.
That's right. And what about the segregation in World War II? Under Roosevelt,
Yeah.
I'm an admirer of Roosevelt in most ways, but not in all ways.
Anyway, I like the way you're going, by the way. In a couple more years, you'll be on Rush. But let's face it, they were able to take, last cycle, a man who I know very well, who was a prototypical CEO, and demonize the guy who gave away almost all his wealth to charity in his church, and demonize him because he was successful and wealthy. I talked about countercultural earlier on. This is as countercultural as you get. Hillary Clinton tried to get to the left of Elizabeth Warren. Now, there's no room over there on the left from Elizabeth Warren. But Hillary Clinton a few weeks ago said, corporations don't create jobs. Remember? Now, if her name was Smith, we'd be laughing. It would be a minor candidate. We'd be laughing. She said that. I don't think she believes that. I hope not. She's become very wealthy. Good for her. I don't dislike her. She's wealthy. I dislike her because I don't know what she believes, if anything. But your point is, both your points are well taken. Sometimes it's our fault, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we need help. You know, Israel. Jewish Marylanders. I mean, I ran against Bobby Kennedy's daughter. I beat Bobby Kennedy's daughter for governor of Maryland. And she famously told the Jewish Times in Baltimore, I can't imagine any Jewish Marylander voting for Bob Rowe. My record in Congress, trips to Israel, my closeness to the Jewish community, all well known, but she couldn't imagine Jewish Democrats voting for Bob Rowe in Maryland. I carry Jewish precincts. Because I had the time and energy and record to overcome those obstacles. But it's not easy. Some of my Jewish friends voted for Barack Obama, who had one of the worst Israel voting records in the United States Senate. And now they're surprised. Now they're shocked. Bibi Netanyahu gets treated like this? Yeah. There's votes on the left in that. And you know. I could come maybe to audio class one day.
You're invited.
All right, my wife could be here tonight, and as you all know, your wife is smarter than you are. She's made a couple of observations that I think are really worthwhile. I'd love to get your take on this. the Democrats are going to get their 40 to 45%. The Republicans are going to get their 40 to 45%. And unfortunately, this election, like most elections, is going to be decided by that middle 15 to 20%, the so-called low information voter, the casually attentive voter. The voters don't really start paying attention until the end of the summer of 2016 or the end of the summer of 2012. Now, as you mentioned, there's a narrative out there that Republicans don't like women, Republicans are against poor people, they're anti-immigration, they're anti-Hispanic, I mean, you name it, there's a whole litany of cliches that are out there. And all these cliches have one thing in common, they're all repeated again and again and again by the liberal media. New York Times, NPR, major networks. We all know that. The problem is, you have to put the dots together. The problem is that the casually attentive middle 10 or 15% that decide the elections are getting their information and forming their opinions from the liberal media. So my wife's observation is that whether it's Scott Walker or Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or whomever, good people all, running against Hillary Clinton, they're not actually running against Hillary Clinton. They're running against the liberal media, because the liberal media will determine the opinions of that middle 15% swing vote that will determine the election. So what would you recommend in terms of a media strategy for the eventual nominee to get around the liberal media and get their message, which is good and will resonate with real people, directly to the public without being distorted by the filter of the liberal media? What would you recommend?
Next question. That's a hard. Irish speaks right from Brisbane. What was that right there? Irish speaks right
He's good.
Do you remember the old Doonesbury cartoon where Reagan was running? And there was a famous Doonesbury cartoon, and it said, he had at a Reagan at a press conference, he said, there he goes again, he's going above our, the press, they're sitting there he goes again, he's going above our heads. That's part of your answer. Part of your answer is, you're right, you go direct, you go above them. You don't fool with them. You know, when I go on MSNBC, my friends go, my wife goes, what? Chris Matthews is in Maryland, so we have fun. Part of the answer is don't do dumb things.
Oh,
Don't
sure.
say dumb things on rape.
Oh, yeah.
That lead to narratives that they take
Right.
on.
No unforced errors.
Unforced errors. They can have unforced errors.
Right. Because they go on
Corporations don't create jobs. That's an unforced error, but nobody pays attention.
Right.
And the third thing is, going back to my earlier, it's definitions. Why do the most liberal Democrats in Congress oppose vouchers and charter schools and residential charters and school choice when they send their kids to the most elite private schools? Do you ever see the tears of the parents in Washington D.C., mostly poor black women, when their kids get chosen for the voucher program in Washington D.C.? You know what those tears are? Tangible love that my kid's going to be able to punch their ticket like everybody in this room. And you see the tears of the parents of the ones that don't get chosen? Sentenced to usually a dysfunctional public school. We should televise that press conference when those vouchers are chosen. And we should interview those women. You want to start a charter school movement in this country? Female, black, Wisconsin legislators and Republicans started the charter school movement. Nobody knows that. That's your point. Nobody knows that. We need to define our terms. People ask me about Baltimore now. I'm not suddenly in demand because everybody wants to see me because I'm going to grow up in West Baltimore. Like I have some credible insight into neighborhoods where there's no fathers, no jobs, a drug culture, and kids get in trouble. Oh, but did I mention dysfunctional schools? Like I have some insight. Like, that's not so hard to figure out. As governor of Maryland, there was a provision of No Child Left Behind that allowed me to close or go public charter or private vendor schools that were dysfunctional. I had 7 schools, 7 or 9, I forget which now, that were so dysfunctional, the kids were literally not passing at 90% plus rates, not passing civics, math. At one school, Southwestern High School, the kids were passing one functional test, 3%. Okay, 3%. Mostly poor black kids, some Hispanic, few white, mostly black. I tried to use No Child Left Behind to either close or go. The unions and the Black Caucus not only stopped me, they had a celebration to celebrate their win over the Republican governor who was trying to preempt their authority over their schools in their city, despite the fact they were so dysfunctional, these kids were flunking out in big numbers. That's their definition of compassion. Okay. We need to define our terms. I've become radical in school choice. I've seen so many bad schools. I've seen so many kids not given their opportunity to punch their ticket. I'll take anything to rely on these schools. I don't care what it is, because these kids might have a chance to succeed in life. And so then the press comes to me when Baltimore burns and says, what's happening? What? 50 years later, the Great Society, $23 trillion, horrible schools, no jobs, no fathers, and we have national inquiries into what's happening? My 15-year-old figured it out in a second. We need to define our terms. Compassion is not another bureau, another agency, another department, another buck out of your pocket. Compassion is getting those kids out of schools.
Could I raise one other?
Well, you're on a roll, so why would I stop you now?
I think that our educational policies have insulted religion and equated religion with ignorance, or with a kind of educated stupidity. And I think religion teaches us that success isn't always a matter of money. That success in life is a moral matter. And I think the Republicans can embrace that and have embraced that. I think this whole thing, even the hot issue of abortion, even there, the Republican support from the religious right is welcome. And they're the ones who love Israel because they see the moral dimensions of that nation. Not only its technological genius, which is wonderful, but also its spiritual genius, its spiritual complexity, where the Orthodox are disrespected and respected. They're necessary to the survival of the country. But not everybody agrees with them.
So you were a Democrat at one time? You tell me you were a Democrat? So you were a Democrat at one time? Really?
Yes.
You were a Democrat. Okay.
Well, I was never. I mean, I was a Democrat in the sense that the McCarthy years forced me. Okay. I hate repression. I like expression. That's what art is about.
One of my great frustrations in Congress was to see, and by the way, I've been to Israel a bunch of times and have sort of a relation with the Jewish community in Maryland that's been very close over the years. I'm Methodist by a few rabbis who adopted me. And was the discomfort with moderate Jewish voters voting Republican. And it was always about abortion. It was always abortion. Abortion's become this weird, I saw it, abortion's just become, for some reason, the issue. Now, when I juxtapose that to what we know about what's happening in Israel, and American Jews, more secular, less interested in Israel, right? Same thing is happening in Israel. And then we juxtapose the rings of terror surrounding Israel. And then we juxtapose this president and this administration. I would argue to you Israel is in a more tenuous position today than it has been since the beginning of 1948. And I think I've seen a lot of nods. And so, yet you have this resistance to voting Republican. And I can't fix that. I'm not Jewish.
We can't fix it either.
If you can't fix it, we're in trouble.
I don't get it.
And by the way, when I say fix, I'm not expecting it to change overnight, but I'm talking about over time. Like people come to me and say, what about the Republicans? It's all white, it's all suburban. And I say, yeah, you know what's really interesting about the Republicans today? Look at the New Deal coalition. The Irish and the Italians and the Germans and the Poles, all urban, all Democrat, work for government. What is the base of the Republican Party today in suburban America? Germans, Poles, Italians, middle class, ethnic, Catholics in many cases. That's the base of the Republican Party. Hispanics, same thing, I think, in the next 10, 20, 30 years. I think you're going to see that. So I think demographically, my party is well suited for the future. It's up to people in this room to change hearts and minds in the Jewish community. I can do my thing. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to engage. I've engaged. I've been to synagogues. I debated Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, where the rabbi was the moderator of the debate, and he had a Townsend button on as the moderator, okay? Not a friendly rabbi. Should have been the moderator. That's okay. The people were against me about 10 to 1 in that particular synagogue anyway. It didn't matter. My point is, I'm not expecting miracles, but I am expecting incredibly successful people, Jewish people in America, to recognize their friends in really difficult times, and they're not getting better. And the demographics, in fact, are working the other way. And you all have seen the polls with young people, particular secular young Jews, much less interested in Israel. Much less. And that's a problem. It's really a problem for those of us who really care about Israel. We're not Jewish. Sorry. Both times, sorry.
I think that we all agree upon the wonderful things that are being said today and tonight. One of the things that I'm most concerned about, and I frankly am wondering how the Republicans who are going to be running for president are going to be dealing with this, is that Obama was elected as an agent for change, and I didn't think he was going to be successful. However,
he's been very successful.
I think I underestimated him because he is on a roll, and when you have and you actually convert Chief Justice Roberts to be a far left liberal, then I think, except for the EPA decision thing,
we won one.
But that was in my mind, I think, one of the most important of all.
That was important.
So that being the case, they have, in a very concerted manner, opened up the borders, trying to increase the number of people who are going to vote for Democrats. We are, as this gentleman talked about, saying that we are almost evenly split, 45-45, and that's going to be the middle 10% that we're going for. This is a game of demographics.
Yes.
And unfortunately, politics can be very ugly because you have to, at times, you have to win in order to change things.
Absolutely.
And so they're playing to the hand of the new American. And that's something that scares me very much because they aren't, they being the Democrats, don't have, aren't tied to the truth and to the American way as I believe we as conservatives are. And I don't trust them not to say anything that it takes to get that 10%. And if we, as conservatives who are worried about the future of America, and I think that this election coming up is going to be a telltale election for where we go because we've gone so far to the left. What are we going to do in terms of what are the candidates going to do in order to put forward, and this is kind of, I guess, a build-up on the question that was asked earlier, to get that 10%. We can't simply rely upon education and the statements of what's right and hope that that's going to convince people.
We've tried that, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. We have to use the media, we have to use our money, and what is it that we're going to do as opposed to getting 16, 20 people who are going to be up there fighting each other to unite and to,
As I said earlier, don't get all caught up in 1620 now. It's not going to be 1620 in a couple months.
Okay.
And by the way, as long as it's civil, I mean, these are all pretty people with stories to tell. They're all friends of mine. A lot of them. They're pretty good.
and thank goodness.
Don't do dumb things.
They're all good. Just strengthen the brand.
Well, I'm going to say part of your answer. Don't do dumb things.
They're all good. I'm not worried about 16.
We got out technology that both cycles last time, 2 times ago, and last time. No excuse. There are Republicans in Silicon Valley. Okay? We should, not everybody works for Google's a liberal Democrat, okay? There are people who actually can help us not get out technology that, as we were last time. But again, I think 3 million people didn't vote for Mitt Romney. Was it just Mormonism?
No.
It was some of that. It was. We hate to admit it, but it was. I hate to admit it. Now, by the way, you said you used the word, my favorite word, winning. We can be right. We love to celebrate. We have the think tanks. We have the intellectuals. We own talk radio. We have Fox. It's all great, but we're talking to each other. You gotta win. My 5th grade, Drew, who's now 15, he was 5 or 6, he came over one day and told us, my teacher said it's really not important whether I win the game bad. I said, so, I thought it was French teacher immediately, so, it's a joke on French. And, and so we sat down with him and I had dinner, my wife and I said, you know what, Drew, let me just put it this way. If we don't win the race, we don't get to live in this mansion anymore. He got it.
Turn him around.
So God made us scoreboards for a reason, to keep score. And winning really counts in politics. And so we've tried the intellectual approach, but some of this is not hard. Don't do dumb things. Some of it is hard. The technology, the money, has the right decision has to be made. And then it's the right candidate. You know what? It's like everything in life. Like your spouse, your favorite teacher, favorite ball player. It's, you know, we got to have someone who can bring that 10%, enough of that 10% over. We tend to over popularize Reagan, but we forget when Reagan was running, old, dumb, warmonger, they called him everything. He just, okay. young people voted for Reagan. Sometimes and he was pro-life, but pro-choice people voted for Reagan. So my point is, it does come down to the right person. And this is, in a real sense, it's a democracy, it's a little bit popularity contest. And they've been more popular than us for reasons we've articulated here, but it does come down to the right candidate. So I don't mind 14, 15 people on stage right now, but when it gets real serious, we better be real serious about the person who can carry that message.